Bonjour. Hello. Buonasera. I don't remember much Italian. All right, so what we are looking at is stuff for podcasting. So trying to keep up a few things so that I can keep an eye on it without losing it. It's too much. There's paper, there's notes, there's live stream, and there's web tabs. A lot going on. All right, so a Monstrous Mystery web podcast, right? That's what we're calling it, right? I mean, it'll work for right now. Because here's the thing. Yeah, I don't want those two. So what we've got here are, I may pull them out at another time, but it's two on the nose. El Chupacabre and Headless Horseman. And I might see if I can dig up some other legends. of other headless horse people. Because I don't imagine Sleepy Hollow is the only one of those types of stories. Jersey Devil also maybe pull that one out. Because I had basically Wendigo, Jersey Devil, El Chupacabra, and Headless Horseman. And I think what I'm going to do, it took a little while to get my head used to the idea, is there's a temptation, there's a want for me to take the existing legends of things like Wendigo and make a more believable modern reboot. So to take those stories, tell them again in a modern setting. And I think the struggle I'm having with that is that just some of this stuff is just so hocus pocusy that it's hard to take seriously. It's not like you're expecting you're going to find it on the cover of a newspaper or a magazine. Oh, they've uncovered the reality of the Loch Ness Monster. Like, you can get away with that for very few things. But is that in fact what I'm trying to do? Or is what I'm trying to do give you two stories and have you figure out which one I made up? That's really all what we're trying to do. So instead of doing this thing where I say, like, I could use something like the story of the Sphinx from Egypt and tell the story of solving the Sphinx's riddle or it'll eat you. I mean, it's too mythological, too magical to be a real world thing. But that's not the point. The point is this story older than you and I? Or is this story something I made up yesterday? And I think that kind of approach is a better way to go. So I could tell stories like the Headless Horseman type stories, maybe involving, say, the original roots of where the Headless Horseman came from. The story of a Prussian soldier in World War I. No, it would be before that. When did the original Sleepy Hollow story come? It had to be 1800s, 1700s. So it would have had to been before the American Revolution that a Prussian soldier would have been punished by having their head cut off. I'm just trying to remember the mythology of the origins of those stories. So that's the story we know as Sleepy Hollow. But other horsemen being headless, I'm sure there's other stories. And if I tell you one of those stories, you get to try to decide whether or not I made it up or if it's based on the stuff that Sleepy Hollow is based on. That's sort of what I think we're trying to go for with this kind of thing. And not only does that make it a little bit easier to pursue from that perspective of trying to just lay out a story and ask you about whether or not we think it's real or made up. Real. But I think it opens up the avenue for going forward with future stories. Because, like, right now, I'm going to focus on some spooky stuff, but other monsters, like Japanese kappa, Kappa, I think it is, or the tengu. Those are mythological creatures. I can tell their stories without worrying about whether or not it seems realistic to tell the story of a frog person living in the rivers with a dish in its head that if it spills its contents, it dies. Some silly thing like that. I mean, I don't have to worry about whether or not it sounds real. I just have to set it up as, here's a story. Did I make this up? Or did it come from somewhere else? And then I can do Russian monsters and Middle Eastern monsters and tell their stories in a way. Sometimes I'll do them as a more modern take on them, but tell them sometimes in a way that doesn't have to worry about covering up the magical thought processes behind them. Because, like, I can tell you the story of Medusa, and the idea behind it of a young woman who's so attractive that she's chased and ultimately raped by a divine being, and as punishment, another divine being punishes her by making her hideously ugly enough to turn people to stone by just looking at her. Like, that has so much magic and gods in it that it's not a playground for, like, I can't tell you that as a story of somebody who had the apartment next to me and, it's like living in the city, whatever, has a daily job, and that's the crime that was done to them, and as a punishment by some mystical entity, she's cursed. Like, I can't make that work unless we first are willing to suspend the disbelief. And in order to do that, we have to set the groundwork that the stories I'll be telling aren't tabloid newspaper realistic. They're not even that realistic. Some of them are just plain gonna be retellings of myths. They're gonna have magical thinking and false gods from ancient histories. But that doesn't change the fact that we can get away with telling this story. Now, I want to do it. I'm debating about whether I'm going to start the script off for each episode with some of these stories are based on real stories, but the names and locations have been changed to protect the mythical, or some such thing like that. I do think that's not bad right there. I might give that a go. So I've sort of kind of pulled together some more believable ones for Halloween season. I'm not going to pretend that they're all super believable, but they have some ways that when I make them into a retelling taking place in the modern world, that they're almost believable as if they could come off of a newspaper. And it's weird because they're based off of, at least two of them are based off of Greek mythology. But just a little tweaking, mostly to change names and locations, and telling the story the right way, I can rebuild them in a way that you could almost imagine that being like an urban legend or a story about somebody or something that really happened. Now I'm going to do that for about 4 of them. And then on Halloween, we've got ghost stories. And I think what I'll probably do for that one, so what I was thinking with this is, most of the time the episodes for the month of October are going to be monster, which one's real, which one's made up. And then next episode is going to be the next 2, one made up, one real, which one's which. And then when we get to the end of October, so the 5th, 2, 3, 4, the 5th Saturday on Halloween, I may switch up the format to be a little bit more of, I'll tell you a story, you tell me whether this is made up or real. I'll tell you another story, you tell me if this is made up or real. I'll tell you another story, you say true or false. I'll tell you another story, true or false. That way I can pack in more in one episode, so I can do, because we're still stuck with the format of the binary answer. In the first 4 episodes, that binary answer is story 1 or story 2, story 1 or story 2. So in this case, story 1 or story 2, which one's one I made up? But when Halloween comes along, it's going to be, tell a story, is this the one I made up or isn't it? And then the next one, tell a story, is this one I made up or isn't it? And I can do more than 2 for that episode. So I can do a longer episode with multiple choices for an all Halloween Eve story. And that's, I think, what I'm going to end up doing for a Monsterous Mystery Podcast. Play it by ear. I've already sort of made a list of the 5 sounds I want to do for the first one. I may build out a little bit more for future lists. The game of sound decisions, I've actually started recording some of those sounds. I don't have the best materials for doing it. Most of the stuff I've been able to do in public have been done with my phone, so the recording's not going to be great. It is what it is. The play it by ear, I do want to kind of do in more controlled recordings. And that really just leaves Choice Tales and the Fabulists game. And I did have thoughts about the Choice Tales being something that I can do longer form. So like I do long narration, true or false kind of option. So I could do them as like a murder mystery. And I'm thinking that's what I want to try to do for 1 or 2 in October. So like a murder mystery where you're exposed to narration of events that supplies a clue. And then the question is put forward as to whether or not you've caught the clue when it was given to you. And then the next part of the investigation goes forward. And those sort of clues will lead you to the suspect. And those, as we go through that list, if you get wrong any details, the suspect might get away. I feel like that's one way to do this. There's also the corn maze approach, where every direction you take a turn there's a right and a wrong way to go. I think that's going to be taking some very careful scripting approach to do that. But I think it could be done. Honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking, there's a kids game, a board game, sort of, that you could play when I was younger. Oh, it was called Guess Who, where the person asks a question. Is this person bald? And if the answer is yes, then you put down any of the suspects who are not bald. If the answer is no, you put down all the bald suspects. And that's how it's a process of elimination, of finding out who your suspect is. And you can do something similar, where instead of somebody asking questions about the player of the video wouldn't ask the question of, is this person bald? You would tell them in a story narrative that hairs from the murder suspect were found at the scene. Examine shows that they are false hairs, like one might have for a wig or a toupee. And that information you would then use as implication of somebody who's bald, who wears a wig. And therefore, the elimination process of the player for getting it wrong would be based off of them not catching that clue. So yeah, that's not the best example, but essentially what you're doing is you have a field of subjects that are your suspects, and each of them has a set of clues that can eliminate them. You set that up narratively, and then you come to a section where the thing that would eliminate them you set up as the yes or no question. And you just progress through that until you've given them everything they need to eliminate the suspects. bring them down to option 1 or 2. And from there, they have to get it right or they lose. So that's one way to do this choice tales. That's not the easiest to explain, but if I do it right, I think it has a lot of legs to be used multiple times. The corn maze approach has limited capabilities to be used that way. I mean, I can change the maze every time, but it's going to feel kind of the same. I can give you different genres of it. I can do a trapped in an alien prison on a spaceship or something like that. I can do corn maze in a horror show. I can do a dungeon in a fantasy setting. But it's still going to always have that maze run feel. And then the Fabulists game. That's the one that sort of remains to be scripted for me. I want to kind of do it right. I think I'm going to, after the video tonight, I think I'm going to hop over onto my sitting area with a couple of my notebooks. See if I can pull up which notebook, because I can't remember which notebook I was using at the time, that I used for roughing out the ideas for the puzzles in Space Cadet was the story I was working on. And see if I can just give that one legs again. Because I think that one I was using the 1 through 9 option. And I had an idea for a similar thing that was the start of a series that I was going to do. It was Captain Cosmos. And each, it was like those old serials where you had the cliffhanger ending every episode. Next week, you had to wait till you get the next part of the serials. And I would set each of them up as a choose your own adventure with a few choices each week. And next week would give you more. And they'd be tied together by the end of the last week. I could do something like that again. But I think a few standalone stories is probably better going forward. I did a few other things this week for some projects, but they're not relative to this channel. I'm hoping to get my other channels up and running again. I did some rework on my Vestiges campaign setting. And what else did I do? I've done so much I can't keep track of it all. That's where we are right now. That's podcasting. Some research for some storytelling. Oh, the other thing I wanted to work on was the monthly projects. So we have Inktober, National Novel Writing Month, Vlogsmas, Janimation, Alphabet February. I don't know what we're doing on Alphabet February and how that works. I'm going to have to sort of build it up. March, not sure yet. April, Script Frenzy. May, June, July, August, and September. I haven't sorted it out, but I do know that somewhere in there we want to do a photo book, some painting, maybe some music, maybe a computer game jam, filmmaking, maybe some recipes, maybe some poems, maybe some fitness stuff. I did manage, that's the wrong click. I did manage during the course of the last day or so in the projects I was doing for one of my other channels to find on a storage card, one of the cards in one of my cameras has some of the footage that I thought I lost when in some of the hard drive crashes. I may have copied it over to the hard drive, but I never deleted it from the card. Here's hoping. One of the problems with that is that card, every time I insert it into the computer, tells me there's a problem. Do I want to go into a special feature to fix it? I'm pretty certain that if I fix it, it will break everything on that card. So I have not fixed it. But in the meantime, I have been in the process of pulling off those video files and some of the still images to see if I can work on them and edit them off of the card. I don't have the capability right now to transfer everything off of the card and just wipe the card and start from scratch on it. I'm not sure how well that would work. Yeah, it's a little stressful to worry that I might lose that if I'm not careful. But I need to pull stuff off, run it through an editor, trim it, get it down to the size I need it to be, save it in those formats, and then pull more off and do the same thing with. I don't have enough free space on the one computer that can accept those cards to do it all in one go. So here's hoping whatever's wrong with it is not a virus of some kind. I don't know how there would be a virus on that. It's the SD card that's been in that camera for almost a year and a half by itself. I think it's just an older SD card. I don't think it's happy about its age. Whatever the case may be, it's something to work on in the near future. I got to keep myself motivated. I know when I do these double shifts at work, it just wipes me out. And then I do not get started on these projects until too late. But I'm hoping I'm turning some of that around. So here's hoping in the next week I can get some more of that stuff done. Until then, I think I'm calling it for the night now. Keeping it under a half hour. I will, and I almost wanted to share with you the stories I chose from Greek mythology, but that defeats the purpose of the podcast, right? I'm going to tell you two stories. You have to decide which one I made up. If I told you the legends I was going to use, you'd know. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. I can't let you have that information. I will tell you when it's over. Maybe I won't, actually. If I'm going to leave them up for other people to explore, I won't tell anybody what the real ones are. So I will thank you for joining me tonight. I will catch you on... What day is it even? Jeez, I can't keep track of anything. Today is technically Wednesday. So I will see you on Thursday night. Friday morning. Somewhere in that range. Thursday night, East Coast time, 11:45. Until then, take care and have a good night. I'm going to copy that so it's easier to put in each time. I think the last time I did that, it crashed something. We'll find out. Buenos noches. End stream.